Awesome, thank you. All right, we'll give it like one more minute. I know Robert Foster was going to join in, and then we'll get going. Okay, it's 4:02. Let's go ahead and get started. Hi, folks. My name is Rich, and I've got some slides to start us off with. Welcome to the Q3 webinar for the PV Technical Division. And I have some stuff I've prepared, and I'll get us started with just a few topics, and then we'll open it up to the collective attendees and give you an opportunity to share things you might have learned about your or other people's arrays, and if there's any anomalies or issues you're seeing, you could use some help from the collective on troubleshooting. We can offer our opinions on that. And if you don't have stuff, I have a couple of issues that I encountered over the last 6 weeks or so that I'm happy to share. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Let's go with a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, can you see my slides? Okay, great. Yes. Okay, here's what we'll go through as I like to cover for anyone who's not already a member of ASES, how to join that. Then we'll do office hours where you can share observations and learnings. And then O&M roundtable if you've got anomalies issues. So for those of you who are not ASES members, here's how you can join. You go to our main website, ases.org. You can see that up at the top tab, become a member. Click on that. I've also got the URL listed here. It is so affordable, especially if you go with the non-print version. You can save more money that way. It is such a screaming deal for so small of a cost. You can join a great network and communicate through the online community, ask for help that way, guidance. There's so many people that are eager to help you. So if you're not already a member, what's holding you back? Just do it. It's a great thing to do. So that's how you do it. And we hope you all join. Okay, so I'll open the floor here. And does anyone have any observations or anomalies, issues that they'd like to share with the group before I share some examples that I can use?
Rich, this is Carly. I was wondering how common it is for hail damage, if you see that a lot, and how bad it is.
Yeah, so there's hail is one of those issues that certainly makes the headlines on quite a few of the trade journals, and it is a real issue in certain locations. It's very location specific. There's some good maps and modeling that have come out of the national labs and other consultants showing where in the country there's the higher probability of hail damage. You may have heard of, we all know Fort Collins can get a softball size hail. It's just really bad up there. Where I'm at in southern Colorado, it's only about pea size is typically what we see. Moving out on the eastern plains, though, you can get golf ball size hail. It is possible to damage modules. I don't get too many calls asking about, hey, we've got these broken modules. Can we save them? Can we reuse them? That kind of stuff. but I have talked with other researchers and consultants who do deal with this. And a couple things to keep in mind is on an older, more traditional module that has glass on the front, and then a back sheet, some sort of a polymer back sheet. It's possible to have hail come in of a certain size that does not crack the front tempered glass, but it still transfers energy through the glass into the much thinner silicon cell underneath, and can cause microcracking that then over the weeks, months of daily thermal cycles and seasonal thermal cycles, those cracks will expand and propagate and eventually start isolating parts of the cell. So you may do some electrical testing right after the hailstorm and it's looking pretty good. You check it 4 months later, you might just see noticeable losses. One way that you can detect that is through electroluminescence testing at night. You can do some field measurements where there's businesses that can do those kind of checks. But keep in mind that just because your front side glass, tempered glass, is not cracked, doesn't guarantee that you haven't incurred some losses and that those losses might not show up for several months. And so when you're talking with your insurance companies, I think some are more savvy on this than others. Now, for those of you with the newer modules that are bifacial and have glass on front and back, the nice thing about those is the researchers have found if the glass is not broken, then the cell is not broken. It's got that strength from the backside as well. But if your front side glass has cracks in it, you know your modules are or your cells themselves are damaged too, and will get worse. So that's what I can share about hail. And let's see. Let me just look at the chat here. And we've got some folks introducing themselves. Bob from Springfield. Solar since 1979. You got me beat by quite a lot. That's great. Stephen Baker, Oregon Department of Energy. I used to be with Alaska Energy Authority, just up the globe from you. Remy asks, how durable are those snap-on do-it-yourself solar panels compared to the rigid ones? I'm not sure which snap-on ones you're talking about. I have seen some flexible. Remy, do you want to just unmute and tell us?
Yeah, I guess it's the flexible ones I was referring to. Easy connection, flexible solar panels.
Yeah.
They tend to have lower wattage compared to the rigid ones, but just interested in knowing how rigid and durable they are long time.
Yep. So I've observed some. People should know that the flexible modules are not made from silicon. The most common technology I'm familiar with on the flexible modules is SIGs, the copper indium gallium diselenide. And is it gallium or germanium? I'd have to look that one up, or maybe Dave Randy knows right off the top of his head. But anyway, they allow some flex. There is a limit by how much you can, how tight you can curve those panels before you do cause some damage, maybe to the cell, also maybe to the actual ribbon solder joint that connects cells to each other. I've seen some, I think they were Renogy's. They were Sigma modules. They had stopped working after just a few years. And I noticed that these particular model or manufacturer, they had only offered a 5-year warranty. Now, I have seen SunPower, and you may have heard SunPower, the company still called SunPower, has filed for bankruptcy. They had separated off, spun off, and were doing commercial and residential installs, focusing on that. Whereas their module manufacturing line, they had spun that off to a company now called Maxion, which is headquartered in Singapore, but they still have all these manufacturing plants. I'm not sure if Maxion still makes the SIGS line as well, but the SunPower flexible modules that last time I looked at the data sheet, it was a 25-year warranty on those. And so you check the product information. If it's got a shorter warranty, that should tell you that they probably have a shorter life versus those SunPowers seem to be doing quite well. I think the efficiency per surface area isn't as good, but that's not really why you're buying these for the most part. You're trying to mount them on surfaces that are not exactly flat and not conducive to drilling holes drilling holes for the typical type of mounting rails you might have. And let's see, so Dave.
I have a question. I have a couple. Two things. One is probably easier. I've been on some projects where the two-sided stuff is proposed, and they're calling for a 20% improvement. And I'm a technical person, so I've been doing this for too long. That doesn't make sense to me because normally you use the backside to cool the panel. That might be 20% if you were in the Arctic, but in normal climates, I can't see how, even if you did get some backside reflection and the albedo of the ground was 20%, you're going to heat the panel higher temperature, and the efficiency is going to drop on the silicon panels.
Yeah, you will reflect all wavelengths of light off of the whatever the surface is. So a typical grass, or say you're out in Gunnison, Colorado, with a mixture of sage and sand, that's about 17, 18% reflectivity. And that's same thing goes for a lot of pavement kind of stuff. The membrane roofs, if it's a white membrane roof on a commercial building, that will give you a much higher albedo and benefit. But at the same time, yes, your modules will warm up a little bit more. I have seen some publications where researchers are refuting a full 20% benefits, and it's really kind of a high estimate on the modeling software that you might use. So we should temper that down. And yeah, I've used that up in the Arctic because I've been in Alaska, and yeah, it's great up there too. And you get more of your year, you get that snow bounce. And so I think part of also the modeling that's prone to mistakes or overestimation is really understanding if you're counting on albedo from the snow reflectance in front, as well as if there's a ground mount system behind you. Really, how consistent is that snow, and how clean does it stay too? So all those factors come in, and I'm seeing some advising that we temper down what is projected on the model that you run for a particular system. I think ground mount systems are generally going to be better. You'll see them on residential rooftops as well, mainly just because it's a module that's available, and an installer is probably buying them in bulk. And so you might get a bifacial module on your roof, but it's got composite shingles, or maybe it's a metal roof that's green or red or blue color, whatever, but it's not that high of albedo. And so you're probably not going to pick up much.
Well, you're not going to pick up hardly anything because of the
right. You've only got that much distance, and really for even on a membrane roof, you want to have that 10-degree tilt and a fair amount of space underneath, and chance for scattered light to come in, bounce around and come in.
Yeah, if it was on a flat roof, it'd be one thing, but it mounted on a slope roof just with 5-inch spacers or 6-inch spacers, you're not going to get anything on the backside hardly.
Yeah.
It's going to be blocked by the panel. My second question is, traditionally years ago, I used high quality modules, SunPower. There's single, they're silicon, plain silicon.
Mm-hmm.
They used like 21 bypass diodes. I'm concerned now that a lot of the panels that are on the market for consumers, they don't know that they don't necessarily have bypass diodes. And so if you shade a corner of it, you shut the whole panel down. And because these panels are very often to an inverter are in a series of 5 or 6 panels to feed the inverter, you could shut down, half your array.
Right. So you
These
should,
shading or a bad cell in one panel.
right, you should be able to determine whether your module has bypass diodes by looking at the spec sheet. It's really common for them, if you look at your modules and how many columns do they have, if you're looking in portrait mode on your module, it's real common for there to just be 3 bypass diodes. And so you got 2 columns that it's like you go down 1 column and up the next, and then that's isolated by a single bypass diode. And same with the middle and then on the other side. Sanyo did make some 4 bypass diode modules that had 8 different columns as well. Strangely enough, I think whoever they were sourcing their diodes from, there was a problem because I've seen a much higher level of bypass diode failures on those modules than on others that I've observed. Keep in mind now that if you have either microinverters or DC optimizers, that's really the best option to go with if you're on a rooftop that is going to get shading part of the day, so that you aren't having one module drag an entire string down. And then if you have multiple strings all feeding into a combiner box, the string that's drugged down and having lower voltage is going to pull power from the other ones as well. So, so it's you definitely want to go with either DC optimizer or microinverters in that situation. And then I'll add that even with the bypass diodes, I've seen some arrays mounted where the modules were in landscape mode, so that you figure, all right, is we're getting shading on the bottom third or half of this module, and so it'll isolate some strings of the bypass diode, but not the others, and not drag things down. Well, when you actually talk to the module manufacturers, those bypass diodes are not really robust enough in their long-term reliability that you should plan for them every day to go into isolating part of that module. It's more of an occasional thing. And so if you're in that situation again for your rooftop and where your array is pointed, it's really best to do the optimizers or microinverters.
Yeah, but that doesn't work with inverters that are trying to feed storage. They need a whole string, and that's very commonly what we're doing out here, more so. So
yeah, when you said feeding storage, why is it that, say, a Solar Edge or APS systems with microinverters, why couldn't that feed storage?
Well, because usually the inverters that know how to talk to storage, the good ones like SolarArc and a couple of other vendors, they actually can communicate with the storage cells, and when a storage cell is overheating, they will shut power off to it so that they don't kill the cell.
Mm-hmm.
And these other schemes right now don't know how to talk to the battery, and so you burn your battery out very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely don't want to just throw in any old inverter with whatever your battery charge and retrieval controller is. And SolarArc does have, the nice thing about them is it is one combined thing. But yeah, and I'm not aware of any optimizers for SolarArc, but I guess I could go look at that.
They just come with it. They talk to the storage.
Okay.
That's why people out here use the SolarArc with storage.
Yeah.
And not the other vendors.
Okay. Dave Rennie asks, can you suggest ways of removing snow from rooftop panels that are difficult to access? So there's difficult and there's darn near impossible. So the difficult ones, you can go online and buy a snow rake online with a telescoping or just an extended aluminum pole and get some pretty good reach, certainly up onto a single story roof. You start getting to 2-story roofs and higher, and I think you just have to accept snow losses for quite a while. Even if you can't reach the whole array, if you can clear off just a small portion, that's enough for the snow to make a toehold and start really heating up the exposed few cells that then start melting the snow around and eventually get it to slide off that module and adjacent modules.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Rich. I was looking for these snow rakes. I want to make sure I don't damage the panel. So I assume that they have some kind of a rake mechanism, a cloth or something that won't impact the warranty on the panels.
Right.
I can get access to, I think your last point is a very important one. I can get access to some of the panels, and once I get some snow off of parts of the panels, then then the heating up of the panels and the fact that they're starting to generate electricity tends to melt the snow more quickly from the rest of the panels. It's just getting it started.
Yeah, I have looked online and seen there's what you want is either a very soft, flexible plastic or very rigid rubber that it's kind of going to hold itself and be able to do some removal. It's not too flexible that you can't actually grab and pull stuff. But you don't want it to be so hard, and you certainly don't want a metal rake that if you go up there, or like a metal blade that if you go up there that you're going to shock and send force through the glass and start doing micro cracks into your underlying silicon. It's like even if you have a ground mount array, you wouldn't want to get your ice scraper from your car and start clearing that off. It's like get the snow off and let the sun do what it can. And it may take a day or two before the sun is that right condition. And I can share an anecdote of a electrician in Massachusetts told me about a fella he knows that has a small utility scale array, and he was getting overzealous, just very well intentioned, but over eager on hiring crews to go out and literally chip the ice off of the solar panels. And the result is lots of micro cracks, snail track defects, and eventual reduced output due to that. So yeah, it's like get something that's rigid enough to be able to do the job, but flexible enough that when you kind of reach up and it falls on the module, it's not really hitting a lot of shock, especially in a specific, very targeted area.
Thanks a lot. And by the way, just wanted to mention, follow up with Stephen Baker. We have a Solarc, and we're very happy with it. It is a very smart unit. The only problem was that the first one we had failed on us in 5 months, but it was under warranty, and so the installer got us a new one. It took a few weeks to get it up there, but it does seem to be a very good inverter. So I was glad to hear Stephen's remarks about their use out in California, because here in Colorado, it's important to get through these cold winters, and that's where my snow issue comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like the Solarc. It does seem to be a pretty smart unit.
And I should add that I'm in Oregon, not California.
Oh, in Oregon. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that.
And we use that because we try to put in emergency service panels on houses so that when they lose power for a week, they still can use their solar.
Okay. Yeah, we have no backup power at all. And that's why the snow issue is a problem, because I'm really trying to avoid having to put a backup generator at our cabin. But
storage solves that problem, but then you need to have better and have to have a good inverter.
Right. And the Solarc seems to be good for that. And we're using Blue Ion Planet batteries. We didn't have quite enough. I think that's the other thing we're doing, is expanding the storage so that we can get through longer periods of snow cover.
Yeah, they were sort of very expensive. They're less expensive ones now, but still.
Yeah, they are expensive.
Is expensive.
So Robert Foster shared that in Austin, New Mexico, kind of places, you're seeing about 5 to 7% production bump annually from bifacial modules. And I think that's more generally what people do see. Drew Gillette mentions vertical mounting of modules along north-south fence lines. I can share that up in Alaska, if you go to University of Alaska Fairbanks, or actually it's under Alaska Center for Energy and Power, Chris Pike and I think Michelle Wilbur and some others have published a study they've done on vertical, exact vertical mounted bifacial modules where they're actually facing east-west. And of course, the vertical mounting greatly reduces the chance of any kind of snow collection. You can get certain kind of hoarfrost building up. But the nice thing about hoarfrost is it comes in with fog and very low wind conditions. It doesn't take a lot of breeze coming back to then knock the hoarfrost off. Rye mice, different situation. Rye mice you're going to get on mountaintops close to bodies of water where there's cold air rapidly rising and you get that rye mice, and that's bad. It's a sighting issue. But yeah, vertical mounting is great. My cabin up in Alaska, I actually have my modules mounted on the south facing wall underneath a overhang, and they never get any snow collection. And I get power all except for about 2 months of the in the dead of the winter, or 2 weeks in the dead of the winter, when the sun never clears the mountain range to the south. So yeah, I really like
Okay,
that.
thanks, Rich.
Sure. Let's see, driveway ceiling squeegee brush. Yep, that's fine too, because it's got that rubber on it. As long as you got the rubber versus if it gets cracked, you actually have exposed just the metal part that holds on to the rubber. That wouldn't be good. But yeah, that's a great way to do it. And then yeah, lower pitch roof. I can tell you that even in Gunnison, we get on the university system, it's a 2 and 12 pitch roof, and it's still on the worst period of the winter. It will still clear in 4 days time. And the full array will start producing, unless you've gotten new snow since then. But even after, whenever it stops snowing, within 4 days, it clears up. Now, here's the caveat to that. It's the array is on one of the older buildings that is less energy efficient. So you've got your modules flush mounted on the metal standing seam roof, and the less energy efficient building will still radiate heat up through the roof envelope, and then it kind of collects underneath the array and will accelerate the rate at which the snow starts melting. Versus if you have a really energy efficient building in the same climate, there's one of the Habitat for Humanity homes that has R60 or R70 in the ceiling space. That is slower to clear. So just things to keep in mind. Great. All right. Well, if you'd like, I want to share a few examples of some stuff that I encountered. And then you can always jump in with some other stuff and share with the group as well. So this is a little odd, and it's not a big deal, but it's just kind of bizarre to me that this came up. I was looking at some modules that had pulled off a roof in Littleton, and I'm looking Kia Ceres, good module, 215 watts. On the label itself, here's a serial number, 1064 VM2275. But there's also this sticker, additional sticker that was placed on the module, and it's got a 1064 Q09, probably QO 9797. And then this other number, 1064 Q2053. And then you go, so why are there multiple numbers? And then you look on the front side on the frame of the module, and this number matches this number. So there's at least 2 real serial numbers on there, possibly 3. Why is that? I don't know, but I just thought I'd share that. And this was every module in the batch had multiple serial numbers. I just don't know why. Fun and traceability. And then on this same donation that we looked at, some of the modules, I think it was a different part of the roof where the critter guard had a gap in it somewhere, and squirrels were able to get up underneath it. And you can see this one here, there's some chewing, but there's still some insulation left. Some insulation will give you some protection, voltage protection from shock. But let's say you go from your original cable insulation and you've reduced that by 50%, whatever that thickness is. Well, you've reduced your voltage protection by at least that. And if this was designed for 1,000-volt array and now you've lost some of that margin, you could still get arcing depending on exactly where there's other conductors here. Now on this one, you can see the squirrels chewed all the way through the wire. And depending on where there's other exposed metal, whether it's the mounting frame or other cables underneath, running underneath the array. And again, this is a flush mount, so not a lot of spacing between the modules and the roof, but you can get arcing that way. Arcing is a major fire risk and could cause a rooftop array fire. Now, they did share that there was at least one carcass underneath there of a squirrel. So, but anyway, it's the squirrel protection is really important. So there were these. And now for this, what we would do if this was the only damage on this particular cable, we'd cut it here and then we'd put on a new connector. And same with this. If you had a electrician or someone suggesting to just wrap electrical tape around this, no, that does not suffice as a reliable protection against shock hazard once the damage has occurred. You really need to cut the cable and then put on a new connector. Here's again, you can see there's kind of a 2-layer insulation here. The outer one is completely removed, and I think I see a little bit of bare copper there. The same with on this one. Again, we'd want to just cut those and put a new connector on. How bad can it get? Well, here, look at all this. It's all bare copper on this one. So on that, whichever, I think this is probably going straight over to the junction box to the left. So we would cut it there and put it on a new connector. We might need to make another jumper cable to connect to the adjacent module or DC optimizer, rapid shutdown device, whatever else you might have the module plugged into. Now, this was one module we had to just fail because you can see the chew marks. It's not all the way through to the bare copper strands, but it is damaged. We've reduced the safety margin on this module, and there's not enough left cable for us to be able to attach a new connector. So this one we had to just have them send to recycle. And then on all the newer modules, and this has been the case for 15 years or more, that the cables are pre-wired, and there's this they fill it in with this potting material to improve the heat dissipation coming off of diodes and just current running through the junction box. So you really can't get access in here to put in a new cable even. It's really difficult to remove this potting. And of course it would invalidate the manufacturer's warranty too. So just thought I'd show, that's what the potting actually looks like underneath the cover of the junction box. All right, so let's say you've got a bunch of modules, you want to do some repair. It's not hard to find crimping kits and stuff online. The one thing I would caution you is when they sell these crimping kits, they throw in some extra sets of connectors. And they may even call them MC4 connectors or Amphenol. That's another major type. But these are probably some third party that has not been certified and tested for true compatibility. So you can get the plastic housing of the connectors to fit, but it's really critical on the actual ampules, the metal part inside that seats into the other one, that they are properly designed for each other. Otherwise, you can get arcing, and then that would be a fire risk. So these crimpers are great. I have a couple of kits that I keep on hand, working with my student crews and stuff. But for actual getting the right kind of connectors, I recommend, there's probably some others that are good. I found PV-cables. They're out of California. They're really good, affordable. Online, you can go on Amazon and find 100 each of a certain type, but it's probably a third party, and Staubli, the MC4 supplier, will definitely tell you that it's not compatible. And you can actually get, in fact, I'll pull up a slide here in a minute if I have time to show you different manufacturer types, and through infrared how they can have different heat levels going through that connector. So anyway, you can get these. And then, yeah, PV cables, you'll see they have it for Amphenol. Here's a Jinko connector. Longi has their own style. Here's the Staubli. And again, you can get these. They're very similarly shaped, and you get them to actually plug in, but they're not meant to go with each other. So you would want to cut off the damaged area. And then with whatever remaining cable length, you'll strip a section of the insulator off to expose the bare copper wire, and you'll add a replacement connector. I'm going to show you, there's this, let me just launch this real quick, and new share. Let's go to this.
Now link you over to our Amazon store, and under the solar listing section.
Can you hear that?
Find this exact kit, and then also the cabling that I'm using today. Now, first up, I'll use the shears, and I'll go ahead and strip back this insulation. If you don't feel comfortable using the shears, you can use some wire strippers matched up to the correct gauge. This is 10 gauge cabling that we're using on this one. Here's a little closer look with the stranded wire. It's about 3/4 of an inch of insulation stripped off there. And then I do give them a light twist just to make sure none of those strands fray off to the side as we try to crimp on those contacts.
I'll add here that I always check to make sure that when you were stripping the insulation off, you didn't lose any strands, because every strand that's cut, then that's one less strand able to carry current. So if you have quite a few come off, then recut it and restrip it.
So now the cables are ready, we'll move on and grab a set of our MC4 connectors. Now this can be a little confusing because you hear people say male and female connector. Now that is not referring to the actual plastic housing here. That would be referring to our metal contacts. So you have a socket, which is the female side, and a pin, which is the male side. So that is where the actual contact is being made inside these plastic housings. Now for my red, that is going to be my positive side. I want to match that with the female metal contact, which will correspond to this plastic housing. Then for the crimper, make sure you understand your crimper. This one specifically has 3 different spots. One is for 10 gauge, then 12 gauge, and then 14 gauge. I have 10 gauge wire, so I'll go ahead and use this one all the way down here. So you just retract those draws, place the connector in like this, slightly press down, don't press it down yet, because now you want to introduce your wire on the other side, making sure none of those strands fray off. And we'll try to take a close look while I crimp this, and you'll see how it folds over those 2 pieces, resulting in a nice solid crimp on the wire. And then once you're fully crimped, the jaws will release. Now, once you're done, you do want to do a pull test, making sure your connection is secure. So once you have the socket on, then you'll go ahead and unscrew this cap, and you'll do an order of operation.
Okay, here, the one problem I have, there's 2 other videos I watched first. One of them, they were using a razor knife to strip the insulation. Please don't do that. Buy either a basic or a professional grade wire stripper. And it's makes your job so much easier, and then you're not going to cut any of the strands. Here also, oh, and then there was another one that a video that instead of the crimper, the guy says, yeah, you can just use needle nose pliers to bend the tabs around and squeeze it. No, no, no. There's a specific physics involved in the way it crimps around the stranded wires. So those other two videos, it's like I was shaking my head, so I can't show those. Here, the only issue I have with this video is you do not need to disassemble the connector. There's a Staubli video here. In fact, I'll just jump over to this one real quickly. And she's going to show you here. It's a longer video, but probably good to hear from the manufacturer themselves. But you should be able to keep it without disassembling, slide it on, and you will hear and feel it snap. So I'll just share this with you.
And insert the wire with the crimp contact into it until engaged. A click sound can be heard when engaged correctly.
Right, so you'll just barely hear that clip,
Check.
but that's fine. They're wearing probably gloves here, depending on what they were. These look like they might be Kevlar gloves, if they were cutting something. But anyway, we'll go back to this other video. So you don't need to disassemble
The cap goes on first,
the connector.
then you have that rubber grommet that would go on. Making sure you get over the insulation. And then we go ahead and put the rest of the plastic housing over. Now you want to make sure that plastic housing goes all the way down. Sometimes you'll hear a click and then making sure it's fully seated. Then you can start to just thread that cap onto the plastic housing. Now you go hand tight with that, but here is where those spanners come in handy. So you have this end that can go over the screw side, and then you'll just match the slot onto the other end. And then this is where you're able to actually do your final tightening. What you're doing is compressing that grommet down, so it makes a weather-tight seal around your cable. And I do have an example of this I cut off earlier. If we take that cap back off, you can see how that grommet will compress around the cabling. That'll keep water from coming in from this side, and then we have that O-ring over here. So once we have our female and our male ends connected, we have an O-ring seal here, and then we have a weather-tight seal from the grommet, so we keep water out of our metal contacts. So now that female end is done, we'll move on to the male end. All right, that is it. The other thing you'll note is that
Okay, so we've got that. I'll go back to sharing the other. Any questions on connectors? We have here Drew says squirrels made a nest under my panels and ate through to the house attic, all the way through the attic, then not through AC and DC wires to the end phase, and we got a DC sparked attic fire and $200,000 in damage. Does not surprise me.
Good Lord.
And so let's see, the other thing on the same topic, again, no need to disassemble the connector housing. So critter guards are a great solution, but they're still prone to error in installation. So I did look at a system recently and everything was fine. There were no gaps at all. You'll see kind of this mesh, and it's screwed into the side of the frames. You'll see here, there's some for the mounts, the rails they used channel strut. And there actually used to be a module sitting right here. I think it was on a school rooftop, got hit by a soccer ball or something. So they took that one out of service. And when they put the critter guard back, they just, they kind of cut it and left this huge gap underneath the channel strut. So this is a couple inches wide and squirrels can get in there. About 400 modules were damaged under there because someone left this gap. The other thing you need to be mindful of, not only gaps underneath any kind of breaches around the critter guard, but just the way the rows and columns of your modules are laid out, how wide is there a gap in between that rodents could also get in? So just be mindful of those things too. Another thing I noticed was I was going for a hike up above Boulder, and I saw a building that had a solar array, and I thought, hey, my cheapo IR camera, infrared camera is in the car. Why don't I just go grab that real quick and see what it looks like? Granted, it's like it was a higher, I didn't have a real good angle, so very high angle of incidence. And so it wasn't really good being able to properly do infrared imaging. But I did notice, it's like, wait a minute, is there something going on there? Is there a hot spot on that module or so? I moved a little bit. It's like, yeah, there's still something there. And so I contacted the building owner and scheduled to come back with my better camera and actually get up on the roof where I could have a better look at things. And sure enough, this is what I saw on the roof. You could see two actual cells on this module were showing much hotter than the rest of the module. And then I got had my visible wavelength camera with an optical zoom that's quite good, and you could see that the encapsulant on each of those cells had discolored at a much greater rate. You can see these cells, yeah, there's some discoloration of the encapsulant, but it's very uniform. Whereas these two cells, the ones that are hot, because of that additional heat, that they have browned up at an accelerated rate. So I let them know this is could progress to a safety issue. It's not guaranteed, but it's a higher probability. And so they're getting an installer to go up and remove and replace that bad module. So those are hot spots. Let's go back to checking the, let's see. What we're talking about is, it was a 12 kilowatt system plus all the house damage and stuff. Oh, and then, yeah, there was a question about using some sort of a snow melt. If I lived in a heavy snow area, I would look into some ways of how can you what would really be great is getting power out of your system somehow. What I would do is literally try to run some heat trace just along the bottom rail of your module, and you get some heat trace. It's really, you plug into an AC outlet and just plug it in or turn on a switch and just start to get a little bit of melting along that bottom rail, enough to begin to clear off some cells, and then turn it off. You want to heat trace is a little squirrely though, depending on how close you are to the cells and how much it's actually heating. You might get some thermal stressing that wasn't planned for by the manufacturer. So I certainly wouldn't put it on the back side of the cells, like against the polymer back sheet. I think that's really bad, but maybe you get away with it on the frame, but for the most part, I just accept your losses if you're in a snow area. Let's see, what else do we have? And then, what can manufacturers do to repel varmints? So here's one thing that I've observed is I've only seen this kind of damage. And Drew, you might have some, or I'm sorry, Steve also might have some different perspectives, but I've only seen squirrels or rodents chewing on the wires when it's in a flush mount situation. I've looked at roofs that are a ballasted flat roof and the modules are tilted up and back and seen no problems there. So I think squirrels like to make nests in there. It's kind of a more confined space. It's where they prefer to make nests. I have heard that newer forms of wire insulation have started using soy as an environmental alternative to petroleum-based, but then soy, apparently the theory is can attract more rodents to chew on the wires. And that goes for just the insulation under the hood of your car or your truck for rodents chewing on those wires. So yeah, in fact, auto wiring harnesses, it's from what I've heard, the speculation is because of soy-based insulation. Anything else? Oh, and then we've got a Q&A. Is there a way to disseminate more broadly, perhaps an email blast? Okay, and so, yeah, were we recording this or Ella or not? I can't even remember.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. And then, yeah, flush mounts are the most common. I have seen one example up in Alaska of just some exposed wires on a pole mount where a moose came up and bit through the wires. And it really matched up. If you look at the width kind of a mouth of a moose, it was right in line with, yeah, moose just coming up there and chopping stuff. So, but for the most part, it's the flush mount. And in certain areas, I don't see it as bad. Gunnison, they don't have the same squirrel issue, but gosh, the Denver, Boulder region, very, very high issue of squirrels that you certainly want to make sure that the critter guard is installed properly and as soon as possible once you finish mounting that last array and turning on your system. Okay, for next time, the Q4 webinar will be, instead of the first Wednesday of November of the second month of the quarter, it will be the second Wednesday due to a conflict with another ASES meeting, same time. I would like, if there is an ASES member who would like to showcase their own array or some projects they built and share their experience with everyone on installing and maintaining their system. This is your group, and I'd really like to get hear from other folks. And or if we had two that wanted to both showcase their systems, we could do that as well. Oh, I'll also add a plug for the National Solar Tour is coming up. If you've got a system, you might want to go on the ASES webpage and add your system. You can either do a live and host people and let them come visit your house on a particular Saturday, or you can do the virtual version as well. So please share your experience with others so they can learn from you. And we've got yep, National Solar Tour. Thank you, Carly. And yeah, squirrel guards, you definitely want them to be a mesh so that you're not really limiting the airflow. Otherwise, your module can get really hot, and that you'll lose power output, and it's just you risk damaging things too. And then, okay. Great. Well, I'm going to stop sharing here. Anybody else have anything before we wrap it up?
I just mentioned that it seems like you could use flexible metal conduit to protect connecting cables. You know, you wouldn't have to necessarily fasten it completely. You just would cut it to length and put it over your wires. And there's probably even a way to rig up something like that to protect the connector itself or plugs in the back of the panel.
Yeah. I guess it depends on how close can you get a flexible conduit to the pre-wired junction box too.
Well, usually you're coming into it depends. You're going down the side of a wall, and then you could go easily through a 90-degree metal connected to a 90-degree metal conduit box
Mhm.
into the building. That would be straightforward.
Yeah,
And I always try to make the connections to the sidewall rather than to the roof, unless you absolutely have to, because it's a lot less problems with leakage. So
yeah. And that's, I hear you on that one. I've seen installers that prefer to underneath one of the modules, place another box and have some metal conduit going through the roof. And still they'll run it inside the, attic space and punch out against the, exterior, like the, gable end of a house. And then go down to the inverter. And I'm thinking, why not just run your conduit above and keep and never penetrate the roof and just go over the edge. So I like your approach better. Okay, folks. Well, we got 3 minutes left. Thanks everybody for attending. Thanks for your participation. And we will see you all in about 3 months.
Thank you, Rich.
well, thanks a lot.
Sure.